Join our community by subscribing. Every click helps us share more stories like this one.
The introduction. In the heart of Briarwood, a quiet town nestled amid rolling hills and dense forests, a chilling secret lingered beneath its tranquil surface. Known for its friendly neighbors and picturesque scenery, no one could have predicted the sinister events that would soon unfold, shattering the illusion of safety that enveloped the community. It was early autumn when the first signs of trouble began to emerge. The leaves had begun to adopt their golden hues, and townsfolk prepared for the annual harvest festival. But beneath the excitement, an undercurrent of tension gripped the town. Whispers echoed in the corners of cafes, and fearful glances were exchanged between friends. A series of unexplained disappearances had begun to rattle residents. 3 people in 3 months, each vanishing without a trace, leaving only a haunted sense of uncertainty behind. Local law enforcement officers, led by Officer Timothy Hayes, a seasoned veteran of the department, were on high alert. He had seen his share of dark cases, but this felt different. The fear had seeped into the very fabric of Briarwood, drawing suspicion toward anyone who seemed even slightly out of place. Officer Hayes undertook the responsibility of tracing the eerie threads of the case, conducting interviews and gathering information, yet nothing tangible emerged. As days turned into nights, the autumn air grew heavy with dread and anticipation, and the shimmering facade of Briarwood blurred into a shadowy landscape of fear. The community was increasingly torn, a tight community now forced to look over its shoulder, unaware that the true horror was already in its midst. It was merely a matter of time before the darkness would reveal its face, and when it did, the sins hidden away would come rushing back, with nowhere to hide. The victim. Maggie Collins was the kind of person whose laughter could fill a room. Bright, infectious, and oddly comforting. At 26, she was beloved in Briarwood, a fixture at the local flower shop she co-owned with her mother, an oasis of color amid the muted browns of autumn. With her vibrant red hair and a warm smile that often drew compliments, you could count on Maggie to brighten even the grayest of days. On the morning of September 14th, uncertainty cast a long shadow over Briarwood as Maggie failed to show up for work. First, her mother merely shrugged it off, assuming her daughter had decided to indulge in a late breakfast, or perhaps a spontaneous adventure. But as the clock ticked past noon, worry creased her brow. Calls went unanswered, and the floral arrangements for the upcoming harvest festival remained untouched. Concern turned to frantic searching. Friends gathered in front of their quaint beige house, each sharing stories of Maggie's last known whereabouts. She had mentioned a stroll through Briarwood Park the evening before, a favorite spot to unwind after a hectic day. The idea that she might have encountered trouble there seemed unfathomable. But as whispers grew louder, a sinister thread woven into the fabric of the town began to unravel. When police officers arrived to assist in the search, Officer Hayes took charge. With the growing tension in the air, he designated search teams to scour the park and its surrounding wooded areas. The sunlight filtered through the trees, casting eerie shadows, and each rustling leaf felt laden with unspoken fears. As dusk descended, the streets of Briarwood became quiet, but the echo of panic lingered. The night stretched like a long, dark maw, and with every passing moment the town braced itself for what lay ahead, knowing the likelihood of finding Maggie alive was slipping away. The weight of an impending tragedy hung heavy in the air, marking the first loss in a series of devastating events that would soon engulf the close-knit community. The crime scene. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting elongated shadows that twisted through the ancient trees of Briarwood Park. Officer Timothy Hayes led the search teams, his calm demeanor masking the anxiety that lurked just beneath the surface. They had covered every inch of the park, scouring its serene surroundings for any sign of Maggie Collins. As they approached a secluded clearing, the air shifted. A sharp contrast marked this part of the park. The tranquility disturbed by an unsettling silence, an absence of the birds' chirps that usually punctuated the day. Officer Hayes felt an instinctive tightness in his chest. Something wasn't right. The team scattered, eyes scanning the area for clues. Suddenly, a call shattered the stillness. One of the deputies had stumbled upon a partially concealed object in the underbrush. The team converged, each step toward the site filled with both dread and a hope for answers. As they pushed aside the twigs and leaves, the unmistakable sight of a pink scarf came into view. Its vibrant color, stark against the earthy tones of the ground. Maggie's scarf. It lay twisted around a gnarled root, as if someone had deliberately placed it there, or perhaps it had slipped from her grasp in a moment of panic. Officer Hayes knelt to examine the fabric, his heart racing. Nearby, signs of a struggle were evident, a few errant footprints, partially obscured, and an overturned pile of leaves that seemed freshly disturbed. The once vivid autumn colors now felt hauntingly dull. The mood shifted as they organized the area into a crime scene, ropes marking the boundaries, officers moving like moths around a flame, preserving any evidence that could unravel the mystery of Maggie's disappearance. The reality of the situation weighed heavily on everyone present. They were no longer searching for a missing person. They were grappling with the harsh possibility of a crime woven into the very fabric of their small community. As darkness enveloped the park, the weight of fear turned from abstract to palpable. Officer Hayes knew that this investigation, which hinted at a nefarious presence hidden among the townsfolk, would change everything. But it was the discovery of the scarf that hung heavy in his mind. A bitter reminder that a young woman's joy had been stolen amidst the autumn leaves. The early investigation. As dawn broke over Briarwood the following morning, a damp mist clung to the air, swallowing the vibrant colors of the town in a shroud of gray. The crime scene at Briarwood Park had transformed overnight. It was now a focal point for investigators, drawing in a growing crowd of anxious residents, desperate for updates yet fearful of the answers that may come. Officer Timothy Hayes had bent deep in thought, sat at his cluttered desk in the police station, poring over the evidence gathered from the park. The pink scarf was now secured in an evidence bag, alongside an assortment of items: a broken fingernail, a smudge of lipstick, and a set of footprints that led only into the woods, not up. As he meticulously mapped out the scene, each detail took shape in his mind, threads intertwining into a disturbing tapestry he was determined to unravel. Interpolating witness statements became the next step. On this chilly morning, the office filled with the buzz of concerned citizens eager to lend a hand. Yet, with every story gathered, doubts crept in. Every account there painted Maggie as a beloved daughter, a kind friend. The pattern began to shift. Several residents reported seeing a shadowy figure lurking at the edges of the park, an eerie character who seemed out of place amid the tranquil surroundings. But details remained frustratingly vague. As Officer Hayes reviewed the grid formed by the neighboring houses, he noted a house directly adjacent to the Parker, dilapidated property shrouded in overgrown weeds, an occasional flicker of movement catching his eye from the window. Its occupants, the Prentices, known for their reclusiveness and reluctance to engage with the town. It was time for a visit. With a knot tightening in his gut, Hayes gathered his things and pushed through the entrance. The chill from the morning air followed him as he stepped outside, determination pulsing through him like a current. He needed to confront those shadows cast by the innocent facade of Briarwood a necessity, in a town that was swiftly losing its innocence. As Hayes approached the Prentices' home, he felt the weight of two worlds colliding, the facade of an idyllic town and the hidden darkness creeping closer. What lay within this seemingly sinister dwelling could unravel the mystery of Maggie's disappearance, revealing secrets that would forever alter the landscape of Briarwood. The dead ends. The air inside the Prentices' home was thick with tension, and as Officer Hayes knocked on the peeling door, a shudder of anticipation coursed through him. The door creaked open, revealing a disheveled man in his late 40s, patches of gray clouding his dark hair. His bloodshot eyes bore the burden of sleepless nights, whether from guilt or fear. Hayes couldn't yet tell. "Can I help you?" The man's voice cracked, barely masking the defensive edge that surfaced beneath his demeanor. "Hello, I'm Officer Hayes. On looking into the disappearance of Maggie Collins. I'd like to ask you a few questions." The officer's voice was steady, a practiced calm designed to coax the truth from uneasy subject. As they settled into the dimly lit living room, Hayes initiated the typical routine. Questions about Maggie's character and any recent neighborhood disturbances. The man's responses were sparse, increasingly evasive. The shadow of his wifey, a gaunt woman, seldom seen, loomed against the wall, her silence heavy as she remained motionless on the couch. "Did you see anything unusual the night she went missing?" Hayes probed. "Nothing unusual. Just the usual ruckus out there," the man replied, his gaze shifting toward the window, as if he could will the outside world to be enough of a distraction to deter inquiries. Disappointed, Hayes found no leads to pursue, and he soon excused himself, stepping back onto the moist earth of the porch. The investigation felt stagnant, an illusion of effort shadowing the reality. Returning to the station, he reviewed the witness statements, again hopes of discovering new patterns dwindling. Days passed, each one blending into the next, filled with fruitless pursuit. Local media coverage escalated, turning Briarwood into a circus of speculation, casting doubts onto the very residents who once felt secure. The haunting silence of empty moments churned in Hayes's mind. Every turn brought him to a dead end, with no suspects emerging amid the growing mire of fear that ripped the top. As he leaned into the cold steel of his desk, fatigue dragged at his spirit. Well, only the pressing question echoed. Where was Maggie? An unsolved mystery hung over Briarwood like a storm cloud, a stark reminder that every neighbor was now a potential suspect. In every shadow could be hiding a sinister truth. Time was slipping away, like grains of sand through a tightened fist, reminding Hayes that he was racing against more than just darkness. He was racing against hope itself. A break in the case. After weeks of painstaking investigation that seemed to stretch into an endless monotony, A light flickered dimly on the horizon. It came unexpectedly. A vital piece of the puzzle, presented by a local teenager who had been hanging out with friends near the park on the night of May's disappearance. The boy, visibly shaken, approached Officer Hayes as he reviewed notes at the police station. "I think I saw something," he stammered, the tremor in his voice hinting at the gravity of his recollection. Hayes leaned forward, instinctively alert. "What did you see?" The boy hesitated, glancing around as if the very shadows might be listening, but pressed on. "We were near the fountain, and there was a car parked on the road by the woods. A blue sedan. I remember because it looked really out of place. It wasn't someone I recognized." Hayes felt the hairs on his neck prickle as the details began to form a clearer image in his mind. "Did you see anyone get out? Anything else?" The boy nodded, eyes wide. "Yeah, there was a guy who got out. He was wearing a dark hoodie. I thought it was weird because it was warm that night. He walked into the trees, but then, when I went back to check, he was gone." A rush of adrenaline surged through Hayes. This was a promising lead, one that could point them toward a suspect if they could trace the vehicle. Hayes immediately gathered his partner and headed to where the boy described the location of the parked sedan. After reviewing surveillance footage from nearby gas stations and stores, they scoured the new findings. It was there, nestled among the unmistakable frames of video. A blue sedan, noted to have entered Briarwood just hours before Maggie disappeared. Parked in an abandoned lot. What had felt like a fog now morphed into focused clarity, the path widening. They quickly put out an alert for the vehicle, and anyone matching the description the teenager provided. Officer Hayes felt a surge of hope that hadn't been present for weeks perhaps. They were finally moving away from dead ends and veering toward a breakthrough. With each passing hour, the clock seemed to push them forward, the looming thoughts of Maggie strengthening their resolve. Briarwood had lost its sense of security, and the hunt was drawing closer. As he prepared to track down leads on the mysterious blue sedan, Hayes could sense the shifts in the dark atmosphere. The tendrils of a storm were gathering, and soon they would give chase. The suspect. The days that followed surged with urgency, the tension amongst Briarwood's residents palpable as news of the blue sedan and its related sightings spread. Officer Hayes spent long hours poring over the surveillance footage, retracing movements, scrutinizing faces, and piecing together the timeline. Finally, a name surfaced, whispered through the grapevine of the town, a newcomer who had recently moved into an apartment on the edge of Briarwood. Jeremy Larkin was a drifter of sorts. His last known address was a city miles away where police had responded to his name several times in connection with petty theft and disturbing the peace. When Officer Hayes dug deeper, disturbing patterns emerged: drugs, violence, a history marked by recklessness. Larkin seemed to fit the shadowy figure described by the teenager. Distant, aloof, yet strangely quiet, a plan was formulated. Hayes and his team approached Larkin's apartment with both determination and caution, stepping into the dimly lit hallway with their caution lights subdued. The first few knocks were met with silence, but just as Hayes prepared to leave, the door creaked open, revealing a disheveled man with an unkempt beard and piercing blue eyes that appeared both sharp and unfocused at once. "What do you want?" Tierney's voice was a low, uneasy growl. Mr. Larkin, we'd like to ask you a few questions regarding Maggie Collins, Hayes began, asserting a calm authority as he stepped forward into the cramped space. He surveyed the surroundings. A hodgepodge of items cluttered the room, but nothing suggested normality. Instead, dark undertones lurked behind every misplaced object. The name seemed foreign to him, and his posture straightened ever so slightly as he leaned against the doorframe, tension perforating the air between them. Maggie Collins. She's currently missing. We believe you may have seen her on the night she disappeared. As Hayes spoke, he observed Larkin's reaction closely. The flicker of recognition sparked briefly across the man's features before he masked it. Hayes had learned early on to pay attention to subtle changes in body language, and Larkin's hands clenched into fists, then relaxed as fleeting nervousness flitted in his gaze. I didn't see anything, Larkin replied too quickly, brushing off the inquiry with an exaggerated nonchalance. Then maybe you'll help us clarify some of your whereabouts that evening? Hayes pressed, flicking open his notebook. The lead felt fragile, edging towards something significant, but it required careful handling. The questioning continued, and though Larkin's defiance shone through, a sense of unease beneath his bravado was palpable. Something deeper tinged his voice, and with every response, Hayes was convinced they were one step closer to understanding the hidden depths of Briarwood's darkness. As they left the apartment, Hayes exchanged glances with his partner, both acknowledging the weight of the encounter. Larkin was no longer just a name. He had become a suspect, and the game was on. With every hour spent unraveling the layers of deceit, Officer Hayes felt the case tighten its grip, the hinges of Briarwood creaking under the pressure of a truth that was desperate to emerge. The trial. Months passed, and the frail hope that had flickered like a candle flame for Maggie Collins turned into a roaring inferno of tension as the trial of Jeremy Larkin approached. The small, familiar courthouse in Briarwood, once a backdrop for local town meetings and celebrations, turned into a battleground for truth. Each day felt heavy, with the weight of expectation and sorrow. The community united in their grief, yet splintered by fear of the darkness that had touched their lives. On the first day of the trial, the courtroom buzzed with a palpable anticipation. The wooden benches filled with neighbors whispering and clutching hands as they braced themselves for what lay ahead. Officer Timothy Hayes sat among the viewers, his heart pounding. He would take the stand to share the findings of the investigation, but a sinking dread settled in his stomach as he anticipated the challenges that lay ahead. The defense team was formidable, and Larkin's facade of indifference loomed large. As the prosecutor laid bare the evidence, gathered witness statements, surveillance footage, and the undeniable connection between Larkin and the blue sedan, the air hung heavy with emotional turbulence. Each piece of information reinforced the painful reality that Maggie had vanished, while fragments of her life flashed before the minds of the attendees. Her laughter, her plans, her bright future all swallowed by the dark abyss surrounding them. But as the defense took its turn, Larkin's lawyer artfully chipped away at the prosecution's confidence. They painted a picture of Larkin as a misunderstood man, a victim of circumstance who merely happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Their argument attempted to dismiss the timeline, arguing that there were countless other potential suspects and distractions that could have contributed to Maggie's disappearance. The courtroom shifted, the tension thickening as their words struck at the core of everyone present. Officer Hayes, watching from the witness stand, felt his heart sink. Could Larkin escape justice? The shuffling papers and murmurs of doubt among the crowd ignited anger within him. a fierce urge to fight back against the insinuations that sought to absolve the man who lived at the edge of their town's night. As the trial dragged on, glimmers of hope emerged. New witnesses came forward, compelled by the strength of the community's united front. They recounted their own encounters with Larkin, sightings of him lingering around the park on the night surrounding Maggie's disappearance. The prosecution's case gradually built itself like a stone wall, each testimony, another layer reinforcing their argument. Finally, the moment of reckoning arrived. After weeks of grueling evidence, closing statements rang out, resonating through the courtroom and gripping every soul present. The jury was tasked with deliberations, and in that fleeting silence, the air was charged with doubt. When the verdict came, the distant sound of a gavel echoed like a death knell through the stillness. The judge's voice reverberated as he announced the guilty verdict, a collective breath released like a tidal wave, washing over the room. Relief mingled with grief, the weight of loss still heavy in the air. But justice had found its voice amid the shadows. As the dust began to settle, Officer Hayes felt a quiet determination rise within him. Maggie Collins had not been forgotten. Her story would linger long after the trial, etching itself into the very soul of Briarwood, a testament to resilience, an unbreakable bond forged in sorrow, reminding all that the darkness could be confronted, and light could return however fragile it may be. The aftermath. The trial's conclusion marked the beginning of a new chapter for Briarwood, but the stars left by Maggie Collins' disappearance remained etched deep within the hearts of the community. For Officer Timothy Hayes, the aftermath felt oddly surreal, a blend of heaviness and relief, like waking from a nightmare and realizing the world had not quite returned to normal. As leaves fell and winter crept in, Briarwood began to heal, but every corner of the town bore reminders of the tragedy. The flower shop that once flourished beneath Maggie's vibrant smile now closed, its windows dusted with neglect. The park where laughter and liveliness reigned was quieter, shadows still lingering, urging those who wandered its paths to remembrate a community forged ahead, determined not to allow fear to win. Memorials dotted the area, humble tributes of flowers and candles, offering a space for reflection and remembrance. Each weekend, a gathering bloomed around a small bench in Briarwood Park, the site where Maggie's scarf had been discovered. Friends, family, and strangers united in solidarity, sharing stories, laughter, and tearful, while honoring the life snatched too soon. Officer Hayes remained a quiet sentinel among them, watching as they healed with a mixture of admiration and sadness. He realized that despite the darkness that brought them together, there was an undeniable strength woven through their fabric. It was a connection born from tragedy, but nurtured by resilience. In the months that followed, the department shifted focus to community outreach. Vigilance against crime became a community mantra. Officers organized self-defense classes, safety seminars, and town halls where residents shared their concerns. The bond between neighbors grew stronger. Distrust morphing into vigilance rather than suspicion. Yet, as the town found its footing, lingering questions haunted Hayes. The motives behind Larkin's actions remained shrouded in mystery. There were gaps that never filled, absent pieces of a puzzle that each day reminded him of the lives affected. of what remained unsaid. The echoes of memories and what-ifs lingered like spectres. One chilly morning, as Hayes walked through the parquet's breath, puffing in the crisp air, noticed a small group gathered at the memorial. He paused, watching as they placed fresh flowers, whispering words of comfort among each other. Reminders of loss mixed with glimmers of hope began to stir. As he approached, one of the young women turned to him, her eyes glistening with unspoken gratitude. "Thank you for finding justice for Maggie," she said softly, her voice carrying a weight that spoke to the heart of the communal strut. "Whether or not," Hayes replied, "justice doesn't bring her back, but it keeps your spirit alive." Briarwood would carry the legacy of Maggie Collins. Her laughter, her kindness, and the imprint of her absence would guide them in their effort to protect the fragile beauty of their communal ways, vigilant, yet fiercely hopeful. As winter fell away and spring began to blossom, the town slowly began to find itself again. It would never be the same. But in the face of tragedy, Briarwood found resilience, nurturing seeds of change, planted in the unyielding soil of loss, persevering against the shadows of the past. And amidst it all, Maggie's memory soared a beacon amid the storm, illuminating the path forward. Reflection. As spring washed over Briarwood, the town began to bloom with new life, breathing fresh energy into its residents. Yet the specter of Maggie Collins' absence never truly vanished from their hearts. Officer Timothy Hayes often found himself walking along the park's familiar paths, reflecting on the months that had unfolded, the pain, the fear, but ultimately, the unity and strength that emerged from the shed. One evening, as the sun painted the sky in hues of orange and purple, Hayes settled on the memorial bench dedicated to Maggie. He marveled at the blossoming flowers, vibrant and alive, life springing forth from loss. It was a bittersweet reminder that even amidst tragedy, beauty could grow. Cultivate hope, inspire courage. Bench felt like a conversation, a safe space to remember and to grieve. A testament to a life that, though stolen, had not been forgotten. As he sat in the serene quiet, the laughter of children playing nearby was a melody to his ears, signify a brighter future. He knew the scars of the past were etched deep, influencing the town's fabric, but the collective resilience forged in the crucible of loss could guide them forward. Briarwood belonged to its people, and together they would navigate whatever storm lay ahead, their roots interwoven with remembrance and strength.